I'm Katy Barone with Smith County Master Gardeners, and we are at the beautiful Tyler Botanical Garden in the Shade Garden. This is one of the places that I work weekly, and we are responsible for the care and maintenance and planting of this beautiful garden. When we took this on in 2019, there was a lot that needed to be done, but one of the things that we noticed right away was trouble with um, erosion and runoff. As you can see, if you look this way, this garden is built on a pretty acute slope. It goes starting at Houston Street, running all the way down towards the Rose Garden, and then there's a long drainage ditch area that all the water runs into. And the problem that we were having is water making rivers through the garden beds. So all throughout, starting right in the middle about where that picnic table is, all the way across here and down, during a big heavy rain, it was just rivers of water coming down. So the man who was in charge of he was our coordinator at the time, we talked about how we were going to address this. And I was familiar from having lived in San Antonio where they use dry creek beds. And I had a friend that was an expert at dry creek beds. So I talked to him about that. He was open to it. So we retained her assistance, and she came and she took a look and she helped us kind of flesh out a plan to implement these dry creek beds. When we started, the first one we started with was the one in this large bed here. It was just a huge, huge issue because it would just dump loads of sediment and debris on the sidewalk, which was a problem. And then later, as we implemented that one, we systematically added others over the course of 4 years. And they have worked really well for us. We still have a few issues that we'll talk about, but all in all, it's been a wonderful asset, and it really has taken care of our problem for the most part. So this is our first creek bed that we put together because it was the area with the most runoff and the most debris on the sidewalks. So my expert friend and I did some measurement. We measured the length and width of the area of runoff as it was. And then we had to calculate larger because we were going to have to expand the width and the depth to accommodate the rock and so forth. So that's what we did. And so we just measured length times width of the expanded creek bed, and that gave us how many yards of stone that we would need. And at the beginning, we had calculated, I think, 3.5, and in the end, we used 5. So, we got close, but not close enough. We had to go back twice for more stone. So, so what we did is we had to carve it out, and then we had to add a few curves. And the curves were important because those curves would kick the water back and forth, and it would slow down the speed of the water, and that would slow down the erosion. If you can think of it like one of those rides at a water park. The real straight ones you go fast, and the ones that are curvy, you have kind of a lazy ride. So we wanted the water to have a lazy ride so it wouldn't be eroding as it had been. So once we did that, we marked all the irrigation spouts so we would know where those were, not to get into those. And then we put in cloth, landscape cloth, and that was just to keep weeds from underneath from coming through. And then once we had that, we pinned it all down. We took some of the larger boulders and we put them at key points along the way. And so the key points were right at the beginning, and you can see that here we have some larger stones here, and the water was going to come right through here this way. And then we put some boulders to the right, some to the left, down further to the right and left, and that would just kick the water back and forth. And once those were placed, and that took a bit of time and some kind of figuring, they were all shimmied in, shored in, and then we could put in the rest of the rock that was the inner bed of our little creek bed. Now you'll notice that these are very large rocks, and that was a requirement of the Rose Garden at the time. And so we had to use these flagstone, which was a bit of a challenge, but in the end, it made for a really effective and a very pretty creek bed. So we kind of shored them in and shimmied them in. And if you take a look, it looks a lot like little stair steps down the way. Now, at the time, there was not all this greenery here. This was all bare. So it looked quite a bit different. But once all the stones were placed, then we came back with decomposed granite because there were spaces in between all the big rocks. And so we sprinkled that all throughout and just kind of filled all the gaps in, some on the side and all in between. And then once that was done, we got our water hose and we just sprayed it all in so that it would settle. Because the granite, once it's wet, it kind of adheres to each other, all the bits. So it's not like cement, but it's a lot more secure. And it doesn't run off like gravel does. Gravel just washes out. So so that was our process. And then once we had a really hard rain, I came out here. I ran out here to take a little video, and it was running just like we wanted it to. It was perfect. We had no sediment, no trash on the sidewalk, and so we knew we had a good thing. And so that inspired us to go ahead and start putting in creek beds all the way down the hill. So this is the downside, or the bottom side of the creek bed that we were just talking about. And as you can see, at the end there's boulders here, and this all slowed down the water and allowed it to trickle through onto the sidewalk and then down on the grass. And once we had this in place and we knew it worked well, we went ahead and made plans. Well, COVID happened, so we had to stop all our plans. But then in 2022, we were able to start, thinking about our plans once again. So the water, the water runs all the way down here. It runs as a huge river down here, but not just here, but every point from Houston Street down, the water runs like a river when it's raining, or if they have the irrigation on for a long period of time, it's just a soggy mess down here. So we had some plans for this area here to make it's called a woodland walk. So we decided to go ahead and address that issue there, since we knew we were going to be fleshing that out with a walking path and so on. So we can take you down here to show what we did next. All right, so this is our new area that we call the Woodland Walk. And we initially had just made a long bed across this way that was half as big, and it was just to slow the water down, which it really didn't do, but we tried. And so we realized that it was a good idea to go ahead and think about putting in some dry creek beds to direct the water where we wanted it to go, to make it a little bit more manageable. So you can walk down here. So this is a really good angle to see what the erosion is like. Right now we have all of these exposed roots and so forth, and it's still a source of problem. It's still, a lot of sediment comes from here down. But what we did, again, you have to remember these trees were here, but there were no ground plantings. And so what we did is we looked where the water went, and there were 3 channels. And so we decided that's where we were going to put our, instead of doing one large one, because it would have had to been huge, we decided to break them down into 3. So we have this side channel here that runs along from here all the way down, and we'll show you that in a minute, but it's connected all the way at the other end. And then we had this little one here, and then this one that actually fed into this other one. So it was sort of merged here. So it's really a combined set of creek beds. So these were our next. You'll notice that we have smaller rock because it was such a smaller area. It was such a the channels were so small, we couldn't use the big wide flagstones, so we used a little bit larger. It's called moss rock is what we used. But again, we planted these major boulders where they were kind of the anchors, and again, we used them kind of kicked the water back and forth to slow it down. We gave it some curves and so on, and that's what channeled the water and slowed it down. And so that when it ran this across this way, it wouldn't dump a lot of sediment. Now, if you, we've had some irrigation, we've had no rain, but we've had some irrigation, and you can see sediment still, even in the middle of the sidewalk. But it was a start. So we still have some problems to work out in this area because um, we've extended all the way down to the bench, which we can look at in a minute, and you'll see where all the sediment ends up. So well, here we are at the other side of these creek beds, and so you can get an idea of the grade. You know, we're still on this pretty significant slope here, and these little creek beds have done a very good job of channeling the water instead of having erosion all through the rest of this area. It's very well channeled it, and then you can see along here we've added some more stone. Now this is much different than the dry creek beds because there's mortar in between the stone. And we wanted to do that here so that people, if they were pushing a stroller or a wheelchair, we wanted them to be able to access this new path that we put in. But and then once we did that, we went ahead and just extended all these creek beds into some channels. And you can see we still have areas of wash that go all the way down here. And then it ends in this sedimentation that's just kind of piled under this bench. So that's our next challenge to tackle. This is a better view of our sedimentation down here. But we just talked about this yesterday. We're going to add some stone here and some plantings. We think that might be able to slow the water down. We don't really want to make new channels because it'll just make another channel through another bed. We don't want to do that. So we kind of want to keep the water flowing through here, but we're going to add some stone in this area up here and with some carefully placed plantings to help just decrease the amount of sediment that's washed down. So we're hoping that will work for us. All right, so this is the last bed that we put in. It's quite long. It's longer than the first one. And it starts up here and runs all the way down to the sidewalk. And the problem we were having is this was another huge river. It ran all the way across the sidewalk, and then it just dumped sediment from across the sidewalk all the way down almost to the next sidewalk, that crosswalk. So we had a big team that came to put this together, and it was quite a work, but we did it the same way with the boulders, the landscape fabric, and then the granite, and then the boulders that ran, the smaller boulders that run through the middle. And it's worked very well, but we still had sediment because all of this up here was only planted a month ago. And so there was tons of sediment that run through here still. And so what we ended up doing, try not to kill myself coming down here. What happened is we still had sediment that ran all along here. It was just all hugging the liriope along here. So our answer was to make another little bed, which we ran right through here. And this one was cemented, and but it's really just a little channel, and it works beautifully. And all of the water and sediment run this way. And you can see some sediments collected here and down there, but the sidewalks are clean. And that's what we really wanted, because it was a pain to have to clean every week, number one. And number two, it was unsightly. And again, we didn't want any tripping hazards for the visitors here. So it's worked very well. And now that we've put in these new plantings, we have much less sediment washing down. So it's a good thing. It's worked really well. So we're really pleased with that. So Yes, that pretty much sums up the dry creek bed project as it is right now. And again, we have some plans to make some additions and amendments along the way, and hoping that works out for us.